Go ahead, Judy.
Okay, we'll call the Planning Commission meeting to order and approve the agenda and the minutes from the May 8th meeting, 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion, any changes, additions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business, Red 5 LLC. Request for a conditional use permit for a 10-unit resort on West Highway 61, Tofte. 2024-7 CUP. Neva, do you want to go ahead?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request for a conditional use permit for a 10-unit resort at 7226 West Highway 61. The property is zoned Tofte General Commercial. The applicant, Rob Dieter, is requesting of a 10-unit resort. The development plans include two components. The first one is a 2,100 square foot retail space for food, beverage, and small items. The second element is 10 tiny homes featuring a one-bedroom unit with a loft, full kitchen, bathroom, and a deck for short-term rental. The retail and resort operations will be open year-round. For zoning considerations, this property is located in the Tofte General Commercial Zone District. The principal purpose of this zone district is to provide for the basic commercial services to the public. This district is located in areas of greater population density and activity with good access to major roadways. Hotels, motels, and resorts are a listed conditional use in this district. Permitted uses include eating and drinking establishments and commercial retail sales and service establishments. On page 6 of 27 of the Planning Commission packets, there's a zoning map that shows the regional zoning of that Tofte sub-area. For site conditions, this property was rezoned in 1998 from R1 single-family residential to general commercial. Currently, the property has one pavilion building as well as 2 storage sheds that will be used in the proposed development. There are no issues with wetlands associated with this lot. For slope, the existing site is mostly grass covered with slopes at 5 to 6% from Highway 61 down to Tofte Park Road and Lake Superior. For septic, the development plans have a septic system designed. For impervious surface coverage, the Tofte General Commercial Zone District allows for a 50% minimum or maximum building lot coverage and a 70% impervious surface lot coverage. This is a more relaxed impervious coverage amount than normal standards in the North Shore Management Zone. There is safe access off Highway 61. For parking, the applicant has exceeded the parking requirements outlined in the Cook County zoning ordinance. A total of 39 parking spaces are proposed to be provided, as well as 1 loading space. The ordinance requires a minimum of 10 parking stalls for each rental unit, as well as 1 for each employee and 11 for the retail space. 1 loading space must also be provided, which is included in the plans. I've included a breakdown of that parking calculation on page 7 of the packet. For public noticing, the application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on May 17th. 95 letters of notification were sent out to adjacent property owners, as well as county departments, Tofte Township, DNR Hydrologist, and the North Shore Management Board. For exhibits and attachments, the application included a letter from the Tofte Design Review Board in support of the development. There were no written comments submitted during the written comment period. Staff consideration for facts and findings. A conditional use permit may be granted upon finding all of the following. Number 1, the use conforms to the land use or comprehensive plan for the county. The finding is that the Tofte Design Review Ordinance states that the following intent is that the Tofte Commercial Center and adjacent areas where significant business development has occurred in the past decade and where additional business development is expected to occur in the future. It is recognized that this area of the North Shore is known for its natural beauty and setting, which attract a significant number of visitors to Tofte and the surrounding area. The Tofte Design Review Board has formally supported the Sawbill Village design. Finding number 2, the use is compatible with the existing neighborhood. The finding is that the use is adjacent to other commercial and residential uses located within the Tofte General Commercial Zone District. Number 3, the use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement in the surrounding area of uses permitted by right in the zone district. The finding is that the applicant has demonstrated that the build-out of this project will meet zoning standards for impervious surface coverage, parking, and septic treatment. Number 4, the location and character of the proposed use is considered to be consistent with a desirable pattern of development for the area. The proposed finding is that the proposed use of this parcel is aligned with the purpose of the Tofte General Commercial Zone District, which is the principal purpose of the Tofte General Commercial Zone District is to provide for the basic commercial services to the public. This district is located in areas of greater population density and activity with good access to major roadways. Staff recommendations for consideration. The proposed use appears non-problematic with surrounding land use patterns and zoning. The Planning Commission should consider the potential findings listed above and modify or amend or adopt as they determine appropriate after the public hearing for recommendation to the County Board of Commissioners. The following conditions could be considered. Number 1, the property shall be in compliance with Minnesota Rule 7080 and the Cook County Septic Ordinance. And number 2, all local, state, and federal regulations must be adhered to.
Thank you. Is someone here to represent this conditional use permit? Hi.
Hello, Madam Chairman.
Can you state your name and address, please?
Rob Dieter, address 32 Sugar Beach Drive, Tofte, Minnesota.
Thank you. Do you have anything you wish to add or change or correct?
No, this is my second pass at trying to develop this. The first time, we got behind kind of the big shift of construction costs and the shift of interest rates, and it was a little heartbreaking to lose that one, but it was timing. So hoping this is a little bit of a smaller project to take on, and it should be good for the community. It should be good for the west end, and I've got some long-term plans. I hope that will kind of align with my initial intent to do housing on that lot, but trying to get the project up, constructed, and cash flowing is kind of the key need in the short term. So we'll get that done first, and then we'll kind of try to tie in with the good work that Jason's doing for the county in my long-term plans. So,
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this conditional use permit? Hearing none, we'll close it to the public. You can stay there in case we have questions.
okay.
Okay. Mike, do you have comments, questions?
No, I think it's a great idea.
And Charlie?
Fit in.
I think it looks like a really well thought out plan.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. It seems pretty well thought out. Seems to fit the character. Yep.
Paul?
I agree. Thorough and, yeah, very much in line with that area of Tofte.
Okay, I'm just picking up, are you talking about developing further on this particular lot?
No.
Okay, so this would be the project for that lot?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Any other,
I'd recommend we approve it with the 2 conditions stated.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Grateful.
Is there a motion to adjourn the planning commission meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the planning.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks for coming down.
Leader.
Okay, we'll open the Board of Adjustment meeting,
Stick around.
and I need a motion to approve the minutes from the May 8th meeting and the agenda for this meeting.
I'll motion to approve the minutes and the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, changes, corrections on the minutes?
Wasn't there. If you say so.
Not that I saw.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business, Peter Guyen. Variance request for setback relief. 2024-7V Guyen project. And Neva?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a variance request for relief to place a principal structure at a reduced ordinary high water level or shoreline setback of 60 feet from Devil Track Lake, which is recreation development classification, where a minimum of 100 feet is required on a substandard lot of record located at 58 Wesley Lane. The applicants are requesting to place a 2,026 square foot cabin on their lot on Devil Track Lake, approximately 60 feet from the ordinary high water level. The cabin will be a single-story cabin with loft approximately 23 feet tall, designed to be ADA compliant to serve the family's needs. The 0.51 acre parcel is a legal substandard lot of record. Variance relief is required to develop on this lot because the project does not meet the requirements for substandard lots in the Cook County zoning ordinance. I've cited the ordinance language requiring the variances on page 7 and 8 of the staff narrative. For background, this lot is within the Freeburg Shores plat. The lots were originally created by the DNR in the 1940s and 50s, and the plat was recorded in 1987. In 2001, the Freeburg Shores First Edition was created by the land commissioner to add land into the plat across Wesley Lane to transfer into private ownership for the corresponding lakeshore owners. As shown on the excerpt from the plat map on the lower right-hand corner of page 8, Lot 19's platted depth is 218 to 228 feet deep from the lake to the road. The original cabin on the property was placed approximately 44 feet from the shoreline. A fire destroyed the structure in April 2023 under previous ownership. The current owners purchased this lot in August 2023. The applicants consulted with Planning and Zoning Administrator shortly after their purchase to understand development options. A shoreline setback averaging calculation was completed to provide the applicants with reference data for their upcoming variance application. On page 9 of 103 of the Board of Adjustment packets is the plat of Freeburg Shores, and again, the application is on lot 19 of that plat. For site conditions and considerations, the septic shows a site plan for the septic tank and mound to be installed to serve the property. For impervious surface coverage, this proposed development does meet the impervious surface coverage requirements. For wetlands, wetlands are not a consideration requiring a variance. The lot does not have any steep slopes or bluff features. There's no significant noise or lighting that should be generated from this request, and there is safe access off of Wesley Lane. For neighborhood characteristics, the neighboring properties are a mix of smaller, low-profile cabins with healthy vegetated shorelines and some larger, higher-profile houses with lawns down to the lake. The variances that have been granted to adjacent properties have been for additions onto existing structures, setback from 65 to 194 feet from the shoreline. None have been for full replacement dwellings. For shoreline setback averaging, the calculation measured out to support a variance of at least 74 feet from the shoreline when averaging with neighboring properties. Other consideration, the size of this replacement cabin will be larger than the original cabin. The cabin will be 62 feet wide as viewed from the lake. The original cabin was approximately 33 feet wide as viewed from the lake. The placement of this cabin will be set further back from than the original cabin. The photo on the next page of the staff narrative is a staff illustration provide a conceptual comparison of the lake view difference between the original cabin and the new cabin. If you're going to look at this site plan here, just so I can help interpret it for you. So on page 11 of 103 of the packets for the Board of Adjustment, the yellow line is measuring the original cabin lake view, which measured approximately 32 feet wide as viewed from the lake. The orange line measures the proposed 60-foot setback for the new cabin, and the blue lines measure the approximate location of the proposed structure. It is possible that the 40-foot wide portion of the west side of the new cabin may meet the 74 feet setback that's recommended in the shoreline setback averaging calculation. I included a table on page 12 that is a general summary of the variance records that I could find in the area. Again, I summarized that in the previous section. For public noticing, the application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on May 17th. 11 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners as well as county departments and the DNR hydrologist. No written comments were received from adjacent property owners during the written comment period. 2 technical memos were provided, one from the DNR area hydrologist, Danny Brown, which recommended denial of the variance based on their analysis of the practical difficulty standards. And that memo is enclosed with your packets. She also included a recommendation that if an approval is considered, conditions are placed to revegetate the shoreline, create a low-profile structure, and put best management practices into place during development to minimize stormwater runoff into Devil Track Lake. The second technical memo was from Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District technician. provided a technical memo explaining there's a well-established water quality trend of declining water quality in Devil Track Lake due to an increase in the amount of nutrients being supplied to the lake. This information indicates that land use practices should include best management practices, which include stormwater controls to direct water away from the shoreline and minimize sediment and nutrient flow into the lake, implementation of a better shoreline buffer, and maintaining a designated pathway to the lake. For staff consideration for facts and findings, these are proposed findings, but not you should sift through them, so we'll just read through. So the variance is consistent with the goals and policies of the Comprehensive Land Use Guide Plan and in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Cook County zoning ordinance and other Cook County official controls. The proposed finding is that the zoning ordinance requires a 100-foot setback from recreational development lakes, and the applicants are proposing a 60-foot setback from Devil Track Lake. And the Land Use Guide Plan administrative and intergovernmental goal is to integrate land use concerns into all appropriate ongoing administrative actions, which has policy number 77 reading, land use related decisions shall recognize the need to duly consider the rights and responsibilities of the general public good with the corresponding rights and responsibilities of the individual. The second question for variances is the proposed use of the property allowed in the land use district in which the property is located. The parcel is zoned Lakeshore Residential. Residential uses are permitted in this zone district. The third variance question, the property owner is proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Cook County zoning ordinance. Proposed findings could be the property owner does propose to use the property in a reasonable manner, residential use. The landowner has proposed a building site that is outside of the shore impact zone. The original cabin was 680 square feet. The new proposed structure will be 2,026 square feet. The new cabin will be located further from the lake than the original cabin, and the shoreline setback averaging calculation supports a variance relief of 74 feet. The next variance question, the property owner has established that the practical difficulty involved is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. This is a legal lot of record and was established prior to current zoning regulations. The historic development of this lot situated the original dwelling 40 feet from the shoreline. This proposed dwelling will utilize the same approximate area, however, will be placed further away from the shoreline. And the application cites the practical difficulty with placing the structure at the 74-foot setback is the existing parking area. This is not a valid practical difficulty since the practical difficulty cannot be landowner created and the parking area could be feasibly relocated to accommodate the building. The next variance question, approving the variance maintain the essential character of the locality. The area is zoned Lakeshore Residential, consisting of conforming and non-conforming lots. The new cabin will be located further away from the shoreline than the original cabin. The new cabin will be wider structure as viewed from the lake. An increased shoreline vegetation buffer that is maintained may mitigate these impacts. And the shoreline averaging analysis shows 74 feet from structure setback in comparing variance relief to neighboring properties development. And the last variance question, the property owner has established that the practical difficulty involves more than economic considerations alone. Economic considerations are not the reason for the variance request. Staff recommendations for consideration. The draft findings support either a denial or an approval of this variance request. The Board of Adjustment should review these draft findings and amend them per their discussions. The application states that the practical difficulties are that a building at the 100-foot shoreline setback would place the cabin in the road. However, this is inaccurate. The photo on the right of the last page of the staff narrative shows that the 100-foot setback is within the property boundaries and would meet the road setback. The applicants have proposed a site plan that places development outside of the shore impact zone. The new cabin will take advantage of the old building site, but be further away from the lake than the original cabin. The width of the proposed structure is significant expansion than the original cabin and is requesting more variance relief than is recommended in the shoreline averaging calculation. Discussion should take place as to whether approval of this variance would alter the essential character of the locality, as several neighboring properties are smaller cabins with vegetated shorelines. If approved, the following conditions may be attached to this variance request. Number 1, the property shall conform with Minnesota Rule 7080 and the Cook County septic requirements. Number 2, no component of the proposed structure may be closer than a certain feet from the ordinary high water level of Devil Track Lake. Number 3, a gutter or catchment system or vegetation conducive to water retention shall be included on all new or proposed structures to divert precipitation and snow melts away from Devil Track Lake. Number 4, the shoreline shall maintain a natural vegetated buffer depth of 25 feet to visually screen and filter water runoff. And number 5, impervious surface coverage shall remain below 25%.
Thank you. Is there someone who wishes to speak about this application? State your name and your address, please.
Danielle Donovan, 5579 Gamble Road, Duluth.
Okay. Do you have anything you wish to add?
Yes, we do. We do agree with the facts and findings that were given. We've also read through the additional letters and have taken into their consideration in their recommendations. We do have some clarifications and updates that we'd like to share. The first one addresses the practical difficulty as mentioned in regards to the building being in the existing parking area. We very much like the entrance of the property because on the right-hand side there's a grove of many 15 to 20-year-old white and red pines that are growing, and when we were first thinking of the 60-foot setback, it was in large part because we wanted to preserve that section of the property and utilize the already open areas. And as we've spent more time there cleaning trash and removing the 2 old sheds, we've also realized that we have more space to move the structure back further than we had thought before. And we would still be able to maintain the character of the trees in that section.
How much further back?
Well, we're thinking,
Like 68, 70 feet, kind of, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And there is one spot too, like a little bit of well difficulty with the side adjoining properties' septic systems. So we had Don out there, and that kind of keeps trees, and we could get the well in a little easier too.
Okay.
I think that in our application, I don't think that we communicated well enough that to us, the practical difficulty was building our structure in a location that best maintained the essential character of the existing lot, which to us was utilizing the open space and like saving the groves of trees that were already in existence. So that kind of brings us to the other consideration of the character of the locality and the width of the structure. We did come up with a design that would be able to accommodate our family of 6, us and 4 children, hopefully further generations, and then most importantly our son, so that we could have ADA accommodations for him. So we realize that the width of the structure is much greater than most, but we also have plans to mitigate it. And I wanted to update you all that I've remained in touch with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and I have a meeting set with them for June 21st with the technician, and we do have plans to enter into an agreement to protect and improve the shore impact zone by planting more trees, buffer areas, creating the stormwater controls, and we also wish to work with them to design a pathway that would also take into consideration accessibility.
And that's how I would mitigate the longer structure as trees and working on the shoreline and whatnot as well.
Our cabin aesthetically will also have natural wood siding, so it will very much have a simple and rustic appearance that we think would fit in well with the area as it is already. I think that's pretty much, I think we don't want to take up too much of your time, but we just wanted to express our intention in working with you to find a compromise that would work for the best location of our building.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone from the audience wish to speak about this request for a variance? Can step forward. Okay. I'm not seeing any. We'll close the public hearing, but stay put. We might have questions. Okay. Charlie.
If I just heard you correct, that 70 feet could work for your plans, and that gets pretty close to the averaging, and I think with that, my initial thought was seeing those trees there and going, that may actually have more of an impact on the neighborhood, removing those, than trying to work in that open space. So I'm inclined to be supportive of this at a 70-foot setback.
Okay. Any other comment? Paul?
I did make a site visit, and I would agree. I think if you had to back it up and cut down those trees, that there are a number of houses on Wesley that back pretty close up to the road, but I think you strike a balance by keeping those trees there. It keeps it a wooded neighborhood.
Okay.
And I appreciate the clarifying comments, and that we have some room to work and bring it back a little bit
Okay.
and remediate the shoreline there, and that's in process, so.
Okay. My one question is garage. Have you taken, typically people want a garage on the property. Have you considered where that would go if you needed one?
That would go on the back lot.
A
if we
different
could,
parcel.
At a different time. yeah.
Okay.
Or on the other side, it's a different parcel.
So you have property on the other side of the road?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from anybody? I would look for a motion.
I would motion to approve the variance with the conditions as written, amending number 2 to read, no component of the proposed structure may be closer than 70 feet from the ordinary high water of Devil Track Lake.
I will second that motion.
Any further discussion? Okay.
Should we go through the-
Let's go through the questionnaire.
Can we just support the staff's findings?
Right. I'd like to
If you go
be
ahead.
sure to identify the practical difficulty, because the DNR doesn't see it as a practical difficulty,
Okay.
which would be the practical difficulty.
You're asking for us, I think the practical difficulty is the existing site conditions with the vegetation in the place that it's at, and I think removing vegetation further back would be a more of an impact on the neighborhood.
And then they're willing to make accommodations and replant a natural buffer, stormwater conduct.
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'll send you guys a letter tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I think it's ironic that it's the DNR who created this lot. Just saying. So, number 2. Paul and Deborah Griffiths request for a variance from relief to place an addition onto a principal structure on Gull Lake. 2024-8V Griffiths. Go ahead, Neva.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a variance request for relief to place an addition onto the principal structure at a reduced ordinary high water level shoreline setback, 45 feet from Gull Lake, which is recreation development classification, where a minimum of 100 feet is required, located at 72 Gull Lake Lane. The applicants are requesting to place a 26 by 27.5 square foot addition with a 26 by 11 deck extension onto their cabin on Gull Lake. The variance requests to place the structure 45 feet from the ordinary high water level. I've included some ordinance language on page 46 of the Planning Commission packets. A definition, the shore impact zone, land located between the ordinary high water level of the public water and a line parallel to it at a setback of 50% of the required structure setback. For background, the county assessor records indicate that this cabin was built in 1973, which makes this cabin an existing legal nonconformity. A variance was approved for the previous property owner, David Gerkensmeyer, in 2010 to allow an addition to the cabin in a similar location. That addition was limited to being no closer than 66 feet from the ordinary high water level of the western shoreline of Gull Lake. An on-ground patio was proposed in the 2010 approval. Action was never taken on that approval. It should be noted that the criteria for reviewing variances has changed since 2010. The 2010 variance was reviewed under the old hardship standard, whereas today's variances are reviewed under the practical difficulties standards. The site plan on page 47 of 103 of the Planning Commission packets, just to be very clear, that is from the 2010 variance application, just to help visualize where that proposed addition was located, very similarly situated to today's variance request. For site conditions and considerations, for septic, the structure is currently served by a holding tank. There is no septic treatment on site. Impervious surface coverage is not a consideration requiring a variance, nor are wetlands, nor bluffs or slopes. There's no significant noise or lighting that would be generated from this request. Safe access exists off of Gull Lake Road. This property is near the end of the road. Parking is already on the property near the cabin and along the road. Shoreline setback averaging. The shoreline setback averaging calculation does not provide an effective benchmark for this property due to surrounding parcels. There's no private parcel within the sample area north of the subject property, and only 2 parcels are included on the south of the subject property. So that was not a helpful benchmark for this analysis. There are several photos in the staff narrative of the proposed building site location with the cabin relative to the lake shoreline. For public noticing, the application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on May 17th. 29 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners, as well as county departments, Cook County Coalition of Lake Associations, and the DNR hydrologist. 2 written comments from adjacent property owners were received during the written comment period. Michael and Sally Valentini were in support of the request, and the U.S. Forest Service Realty Specialist Kathy Peterson requested the following: because the addition is on the side that abuts the National Forest, please make sure they have a boundary line surveyed to make sure they're within the boundary and not encroaching on federal land. 2 technical memos were also provided. The DNR area hydrologist recommended denial of the variance based on their analysis of the practical difficulty standards. That memo was enclosed. There's also a recommendation that if approval is considered, that the applicant revegetate the shoreline and create a structure that's low profile and inconspicuous from the lake. They also recommended the best management practices to be put into place during development to minimize stormwater runoff into Gull Lake, and that if any vegetation is removed during development, that additional vegetation be added to the riparian area and shoreline to further minimize any future runoff pollution from entering the lake. The second technical memo was from the Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District, which provided a memo explaining Gull Lake has stable water quality trend, and it is important to preserve that status and be protective of potential land use impacts that could affect this. This information indicates that land use practices should include stormwater controls, a shoreline buffer, and designated pathways. For staff consideration of facts and findings, the variance is consistent with the goals and policies of the Comprehensive Land Use Guide Plan and in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Cook County Zoning Ordinance and other Cook County official controls. The proposed finding is that the zoning ordinance requires a 100-foot setback from recreational development lake. The applicant's proposing a 45-foot setback from Gull Lake. The second proposed finding is that the Land Use Guide Plan administrative and intergovernmental goal to integrate land use concerns into all appropriate ongoing administrative actions has policy number 77. Land use related decisions shall recognize the need to duly consider the rights and responsibilities of the general public good with the corresponding rights and responsibilities of the individual. The second question for a variance, the proposed use of the property is allowed in the land use district in which the property is located. The proposed finding is that the parcel is zoned lakeshore residential. Residential uses are permitted in this zone district. The third variance question, the property owner is proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Cook County zoning ordinance. The proposed finding is that the property owner does propose to use the property in a reasonable manner, residential use. The request includes a deck extension within the shore impact zone. The entire addition is within the shore structure setback of the shoreline. The property owner has established that the practical difficulty involved is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. The lot is a legal conforming lot of record. The practical difficulty indicated requiring the variance in the current location of the existing cabin and the landowner desire to expand the cabin. Landowner desires do not constitute a practical difficulty. Approving the variance maintains the essential character of the locality. The area is zoned lakeshore residential consisting of conforming and non-conforming lots. The subject parcel is located at the end of a dead-end road, and other residential structures are highly visible from the lake. The expansion of this structure is unlikely to affect the essential character of the locality. And the last variance question, the property owner has established that the practical difficulty involves more than economic considerations alone. Economic considerations are not the reason for the variance request. Staff recommendations for consideration. The variance request includes a request for an increase in inside living space as well as an extension to the deck. It may help for the Board of Adjustment to discuss these 2 requests separately. The 2010 variance approval may be taken into consideration during discussions as it is a part of the parcel history. However, that approval does not set any type of precedence for another approval. This variance request should be reviewed by current standards and by its own facts and findings. The project could be modified to provide additional inside living space, but minimize the encroachment of the setback by considering the following options. Number one, you could deny the deck expansion request. A patio flush with the ground level could be an alternative, as was proposed in the 2010 variance. Option number two, the cabin addition could be made smaller in area. The 2010 variance approved a 20 by 20 addition. And number three, the cabin addition could be located further away from the lake by setting the addition even with the backside of the cabin. Often with shoreline setback variances, conditions are set to require improved vegetative buffers along the shoreline to provide screening and filtering of stormwater runoff. On this site, that may not be a viable option given the shallow soils of the ledge rock landscape. If approved, the following conditions may be attached to this variance request. Number one, the property shall conform to Minnesota Rule 7080 and the Cook County septic requirements. Number two, no component of the proposed construction may be closer than certain feet from the ordinary high water level of Gull Lake. Number three, a gutter or catchment system or vegetation conducive to water retention shall be included on all new proposed structures to divert precipitation and snow melt away from Gull Lake. Number four, the shore impact zone shall remain naturally vegetated to visually screen and filter water runoff. The applicant shall consult with the Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District to explore improvements to the shoreline vegetation to increase tree species. Number five, a 25-foot vegetated buffer shall remain along the shoreline with native species. And number six, the north property line shall be surveyed by a licensed surveyor to determine the property boundary and confirm the appropriate setback.
Thank you. Is there someone here who represents the Griffiths? State your name and address, please.
Yep. Paul, go ahead. Paul and Deb Griffiths, 1361 Wolf Circle in Lino Lakes, Minnesota.
Thank you. Do you have comments and
Just a
things
couple
you wish
brief
to add?
ones. Yeah,
Sure.
just a couple quick brief ones. We know that one of the key things is the impact visibly on the people using the lake. Excuse me. And it's a little unclear from the drawings and stuff. We are proposing a one-story addition to a two-story cabin next to it. And we will keep the profile low, as somebody mentioned or asked in there. The other point is, it was noted in the previous owner's variance a while ago, that in this, on Gull Lake, all the traffic is between the boat launch and the boat launch and the campground going down to Seagull River and Sag. And kind of the unique place where our cabin is, that 90% of the boat traffic, they can't see our cabin. We're protected by two islands and then the DNR lot. So there's not much visibility there. There is some cabins on our side, about 8, and they definitely go by our cabin, and occasionally we get some canoeists, but 90% of the boat traffic doesn't see our cabin. So with that, and then also, our current cabin is wood-sided, tan and brown, and the addition would be similar. We just don't think there'd be, we would work hard to minimize any visual impact to the lakeside.
And I wanted to address the water quality. I think that is the biggest concern, and it should be. Several years ago, Elena Hensel from the Soil and Water Conservation District came to speak at our homeowner or property owner association, and she talked about the live vegetation, native plants for the buffer. And she also asked for people who want to volunteer for testing lakes around here, because it's important that we know the history of our lakes. So after the meeting, I did talk to her, and I told her where I lived, and she talked very much that our previous owners worked really closely with the Soil and Water Conservation District and did pretty much all they can do. It's a very rocky area, but it's all native plants, and we are maintaining that. We also totally intend to, because we think it's the right thing to do as well, is that we will work with them again if this were to be approved, to make sure that we get the maximum buffer that we can. And the second thing is when she asked about, I noticed when she asked about water testing, our lake wasn't being tested. So we are now the water testers for the lake. And we've been doing that for 3 years. And when we first started doing it, they told us that you can go online and find the history of your lake. And so I found out that data was being collected since 1977. And because I'm a little a science nerd, as I was thinking the other day about, we really want to be sure that we do what we can to mitigate the effect of the stormwater runoff. So we are completely okay with most all of the things that Max Tortelson in your packet from this Soil and Water Conservation District recommended. We also want to say that we also are setting the cabin back, or the addition back 3 additional feet from our cabin and from the shoreline to, again, try to minimize the impact on the water. And I think that is all I was.
Yeah, and because as the other recommendation, happy to route all the water
There.
back to the backyard, so it goes through that, not towards the lake.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else from the audience that wishes to speak on this request? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Charlie?
I'm not sure what I think on this one yet.
How about Paul?
To be honest.
So you just said you've moved the addition back 3 feet. Does that bring it, we have a recommendation or one way to amend it to bring it flush to the back of the cabin? Does it do that, or is it still a little?
Our proposal is already at the back of the cabin, so I was maybe, I'm not quite sure what that meant. So
So thus it is already flush to the back?
Okay, so you're making an L basically with that addition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How about a survey?
We'd be okay
Oh,
with
yeah.
that. Yeah, we're fine with that.
I can tell you the Forest Service is kind of mean about that. They expect you to move it if it's on theirs.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
it would be worthwhile to do before you start.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So-
Thank you for the update.
And the old variance, is that still in play? Could they build and,
So our zoning ordinance has a requirement that variances have to be acted on within 3 years of issuance, and that stipulation was in place in 2010.
okay. Was that, in 2010, was that the law?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a non-issue, the
Right.
old variance, so, okay.
I have a question for you, Neva, on that same topic. Is it just the language between hardship and practical difficulty that has changed? But essentially, everything else that we would be considering is the same?
The property's been the same since then. There hasn't been any, like subdivisions of the property or anything
Mhm.
like that that's significantly different.
Mhm.
It seems quite similar in many ways.
Mhm.
It's just important to indicate that there's a subtle difference between hardship and practical difficulty. We don't need to probably go into all of that.
Mhm.
But as long as you focus on practical difficulty, and just to keep in mind that this application should stand on its own 2 feet,
Yep.
essentially, with the current standards.
Yep.
Well, I think because the cabin is there in 1974, it wouldn't be very practical to put the addition 10 feet from the existing cabin, or move the cabin. So I think that could be
Right.
considered a practical difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, I also see this addition being placed in a pretty unobtrusive location, which whenever I see one of these types of proposals, this is my first question is, where are you popping out this addition? And so I think it makes a lot of sense and does maintain essentially the same relationship to the lake, which, yeah, is my first consideration.
And the size of the addition? And the setback, the side yard setback is 10 feet on this lot?
Yeah, what's the, do we have it in here, the total square footage, deck and living space?
The deck and living space,
Square footage.
I have.
I think,
Yes. it's
The
around
dimensions are in here, but,
680. Oh, plus,
Plus the deck.
okay, let me look just a minute while you guys,
If I can, what I have in the narrative, and we should double check that this is accurate with what your proposal is, but from the application I gathered, the inside living space addition is 26 by 27 and a half, which would be 715 square feet. And then the decking would be 26 by 11 feet, which is 286 square feet. And that was information from the application.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, Charlie?
No,
What about the deck? Would a on-ground platform work for you?
We're open to that. Just a clarifying question, if I could. It's so rocky there, I don't think we'd want to do cement from runoff issues. Does that just mean you're just building some kind of wood structure as close to the ground as you can, flat, or? Because
Can you give
it's
the-
all rocky.
What can be built there without a variance?
Yeah, so for our office, the distinguishing feature is the height it comes off the ground.
Okay.
So if it's less than 12 inches, we call it a patio.
Okay.
So if you can kind of navigate that undulating terrain within 12 inches of the ground,
Okay.
then it's not a deck, and then it doesn't need to have a variance.
We're
And that's what they
certainly
had done in that 2010 variance, which I found interesting.
Yeah, we're open to that.
We're open to that.
Okay.
I'm generally feeling like, we're close to doubling the size of the cabin, and yet it's a small, I'm struggling with the size, and yet it's a pretty small structure to begin with, so I think I'm probably okay as it is. Or, I guess I would prefer to go with the patio instead of the deck, but.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable compromise.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion? All right. One of you.
All right, let's work through it. I'll motion to approve with the conditions as listed, and we have it at 45 feet for number 2, correct?
And that was for, the deck begins at 45
The deck
feet.
begins at 45. So the addition, well, let's clarify that. So where does, if we take that out of the equation,
Yep.
if we put that within 12 inches of the ground, then our addition starts at what?
May I answer that?
If
Okay.
you have it off.
It's
Yeah.
the 45 feet, and if you eliminate the deck, it was 11 feet.
Okay.
So it would add 11 more feet, so we would be at 58, 50.
56.
Yes, thank you.
That's great. All right, so we'll have number 2 read 56. Bum, bum, bum. And I guess, do we want to deny the deck? And you can build a patio
Could be a.
without a variance, correct?
Yeah, it could be a condition that, it would be most clear probably if it was within the conditions of approval, that.
Sure.
The deck be
Any,
eliminated.
that a patio is permitted within 12 inches of the ground.
Sure. So we'll add that as a condition, that condition number
7.
7, any outside additions have to be classified as a patio rather than a deck.
Okay.
I will second that.
May I, just one quick thing? Unfortunately, which I'm very aware of, patio is not technically defined in our zoning ordinance.
Mhm.
Our ordinance it clearly establishes deck is 12 inches or more, so as staff, we use the word patio. So within that condition, is it okay if I clarify that patio is the decking material that is within 12 inches of the ground? Just,
Yes, please.
we're very clear about that for you and future
Yes.
owners.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So the motion's been made. Charlie, did you second?
Second, yes.
Any further discussion? Let's run through the list here. Or we could go with,
I'm comfortable with the staff's
okay,
narrative.
Yeah, and clarifying
the
per our
project.
discussion that the existence of the cabin in that location is, we see a practical
Is the
difficulty. It would be much more difficult to build the addition somewhere else
Right,
or move the cabin.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to John and Heidi Jacobson. And it's 2024-9V, request for a variance for a 2-acre lot division. Neva.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an after-the-fact request for the creation of 3 2-acre substandard lots in the FAR 3 zone district, where a minimum lot area of 5 acres is required, and to allow each individual lot to be considered a separate parcel of land for the purpose of sale or development. The applicant's property includes 3 2.01 acre parcels. The applicants are requesting the existing 3 parcels to be considered legal lots of record and allow them to be sold and developed separately. These parcels were created shortly after current zoning regulations were enacted in the 1980s and 1990s. As such, they are not legal lots of record. I've included the ordinance citation for the FAR 3 zone district requirements, which has a 5-acre minimum lot area requirement. The key part of this whole thing is that the Cook County zoning ordinance has requirements for lots that don't meet the area requirements. We call them substandard lots, and how we're supposed to manage those lots for development. And so there's certain restrictions on when those lots can be separated into separate ownership, if they're held in common ownership with abutting properties, and also when they're individual substandard lots, what they would need in order to be developed fully. Part of it is that these requirements don't technically apply until a variance is allowed to legitimize these lots, because they were created after a certain cutoff date of 1985. So it's the date timeline that's going to be key to this. So I just wanted to kind of hopefully set the table with that part of what I'm about to go into.
Which month in 85, do you remember?
Oh, 1984, I'm sorry. It's in our zoning ordinance, and that's the one definition I did not include in this. May
1984.
Something.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's, yep, 1984, zoning standards enacted in my timeline here. So let me read my background. So all 3 of these parcels were described in deeds and recorded around the time and shortly after current zoning standards were implemented. So in 1983, PID ending in 4147, which is the house furthest on the west with the development currently on it, the deed was recorded, legally creating this lot as a legal lot of record. And in the same year, the PID ending in 4146, which is the parcel on the far east side, had a deed created and signed, but it was not recorded. And then the next year, the zoning standards were enacted, and all existing lots before this date are legally recognized as legal non-conforming lots of record. So this, I think it's just kind of important to point out that as of 1984, there were descriptions in deeds for the lot on the far west and the lot on the far east. I don't know what that means for the middle lot. It was like a remainder. But somehow they were all kind of separated out at this point in time. It's just that they were not legally recorded and signed by that 1984 date. So it's a little bit of a history lesson. Then in 1986, the 4148, which is the middle lot, so 2 years after the zoning standards went in place, that deed was recorded. And then the last deed, the one that was signed but not recorded on the east side, that was then recorded in 1995. So all of these lots have been in their current configuration since 1995. Small lots characterize the parcels in this area. 20 of the 22 parcels shown on the area map on the next page of the staff narrative are substandard lots, with only 2 parcels meeting the 5-acre minimum lot size for the FAR 3 zone district. This area is also within the City of Grand Marais subdivision jurisdiction, which makes all these parcel subdivisions exempt from the Cook County subdivision process, and instead it's the responsibility of the city's local control. Again, that map on page 80 of 103 of the Board of Adjustment packets. In yellow typing there is the acreage according to the county tax records for each of those parcels. For site conditions and considerations, for septic, the variance application provides information from a licensed septic contractor indicating locations where a septic could be placed. The County Environmental Health Specialist, Mitch Everson, has provided a technical memo indicating that if these lots are allowed to be separated, they should be required to provide the same septic information that a typical administrative subdivision requires. So essentially 2 locations on each site showing suitable soils for a septic. Impervious surface coverage is not a consideration requiring a variance, nor are wetlands, slope, noise, or lighting. Safe access exists on Thomas Lane. For other considerations, written comments from adjoining property owners suggest well water issues and express concerns that additional development in this area would impact existing wells. Staff reached out to a local well driller to discuss how the drilling of new wells for the development of these parcels may affect existing wells in the area. This is what was explained. Often people think of groundwater as an underground lake we are all drilling into. However, in Cook County, more often than not, our underground water is better thought of as underground creeks because each well is accessing a different layer of bedrock known as fracture zones. Because of this, seldom are neighboring wells interconnected. The well driller had no firsthand knowledge of wells underproducing in this neighborhood. When looking at well records in this neighborhood, most well records show good water sources providing greater than 3 gallons per minute. Generally speaking, wells will provide adequate water for regular household use at 3 gallons per minute or more and are around 200 feet in depth. Individual water supply issues with wells in this area were less likely to be attributed to neighboring wells or water usage and more attributed to a single well's fracture zone or individual usage. Gardening and other activities that use outdoor hoses will be more likely to have an impact on the individual water well supply pressure. For public noticing, the application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on May 17th. 40 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners as well as county departments. For exhibits, the following written comments were received. Number 1 from Wayne Anderson at 959 Cutoff Road, opposed to any zoning change that would reduce the 5-acre lot size. Number 2 from Cody Johnson, 11 Thomas Lane, concerned about additional wells drilled in the area, cites the 5-acre minimum lot size. Number 3 from Tom McCann at 19 Old Ski Hill Road, requests an acre lot size be maintained. Maybe it's a 5-acre lot size be maintained to lessen the impact on shared groundwater use in the area. Cites concern with the increase in surface water runoff, light pollution, noise, and toxic materials from households. And number 4 from Nancy Harmeyer, 19 Old Ski Hill Road, opposed to the request, cites increased water use, added density, increasing noise and light pollution, removal of trees, and increases in impermeable surfaces. 1 technical memo was provided from the Cook County Environmental Health Specialist, Mitch Everson, which provided the technical memo indicating the requirements for permitting if the variance is approved. For staff consideration of facts and findings, the variance is consistent with the goals and policies of the Comprehensive Land Use Guide Plan and in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Cook County Zoning Ordinance and other Cook County official controls. Number 1, the Cook County Zoning Ordinance recognizes legal lots of record as lots that have been described and recorded prior to May 1, 1984. Number 2, the Cook County Land Use Guide Plan administrative and intergovernmental goal to integrate land use concerns into all appropriate ongoing administrative actions. Policy number 77, land use related decisions shall recognize the need to duly consider the rights and responsibilities of the general public good with the corresponding rights and responsibilities of the individual. The next variance question, the proposed use of the property is allowed in the land use district in which the property is located. The parcel is zoned FAR 3. Residential uses are permitted in this zone district. Next variance question, the property owner is proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Cook County Zoning Ordinance. The property owner does propose to use the property in a reasonable manner, residential use. These parcels are non-shoreland and are proposed to be used for residential uses. The next variance question, the property owner has established that the practical difficulty is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. The 3 proposed lots have been described in deeds and recorded for over 30 years. Approving the variance maintain the essential character of the locality. The area is zoned FAR 3 with 5-acre lot area minimum. However, only 2 parcels out of the neighboring 22 parcels meet the 5-acre lot size requirement. Number 2, the lots on the south side of the subject parcels are a series of 1.15 acre non-conforming parcels. And number 3, the subject parcels are located at a dead-end private road. And the next variance question, the land property owner has established that the practical difficulty involves more than economic considerations alone. Economic considerations are not the reason for the variance request. Staff recommendations for consideration. When the Board of Adjustment has reviewed requests to legitimize substandard parcels that have already been created, the consideration has been focused on how long the parcel has been in existence and whether conforming development is possible on the parcel. The surrounding area is composed of many existing substandard parcels, some of which are smaller in acreage than the subject properties. Given that there are conforming locations to build on these parcels and they've been in existence for 30 to 40 years, it is reasonable to allow these parcels to be individually developed for residential use. If approved, the following condition may be attached to this variance request. The property shall conform with Minnesota Rule 7080 and the Cook County septic requirements.
Thank you. Is there someone who wishes to speak?
May I speak from here? We don't really have any objections to what the report was. We thought it covered it pretty thoroughly.
Okay.
As far as what we read,
Okay.
satisfied our needs. Where it came from to begin with was we have 5 kids and we were working on our, what do we call it? I would figuring out our retirement stuff. And we have 5 kids, and this was the only thing we could come up with to satisfy 5 kids on 6 acres. It's not easy. But they were already lots that have been in family homestead for 3 generations. My kids would be the 4th.
Okay.
There's only one family that wants to build as of this time. The others live out of state. Would be like cabins. We're not looking at major household, residential, whatever.
Thank you.
Anything more to add than that? We wouldn't be looking at any other roads that are on anybody else's property. There's already would be a variance, or what is it? Easement for the road that comes off the cutoff road onto our property. There is an Arrowhead Electric easement that is 15 feet on all 3 pieces that's already cut in, but the road that would access them all is the same. It's already an existing road, and it would just be driveways off that road that wouldn't change anything like that. We're tree huggers, and so we'll take down as few trees as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. If we have questions, we'll ask.
Perfect.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? They can come
I
forward.
guess I want to speak. I just need to know what you said. We know that Jessica wants to build on the 1 parcel. That's great. My question is, how many little cabins are going to go on that other 2 acres?
Only 2 are allowed, and they're looking at 1, a shared.
Okay, could you come forward and state your name and your address so we know who you are? This is a public hearing. And then you can ask the board the question.
Okay. My name's Melissa Johnson, and I live at 21 Thomas Lane.
Thank you. And your question?
I just want to know that second parcel, she said, oh, we want to build a few cabins on that, and that's where I'm questioning. You know, is it going to be 1 little cabin, or is it going to be 10 little cabins? There's 5 kids, so that's my big question. I just want to know.
And Neva can answer what is permitted on, if it were made.
That middle parcel.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair. So each residential parcel in Cook County is permitted 1 primary dwelling and 1 guest cabin. And there could be a bunkhouse, but a bunkhouse can't have any pressurized water, no kitchen or bathroom facilities. So it'd only be allowed 2 structures for residential use with any pressurized plumbing.
Okay,
I guess that answers my question.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. The board, I'm looking to Charlie. I guess I could look at Paul first once in a while.
It's, being that these lots, it's more of a recording issue that initial lot didn't get recorded. And that they do support, build out without, that meet the setbacks, meet all the requirements. I think it's reasonable looking at the neighborhood.
Okay, and Paul?
Yeah, I agree that it's a recording issue primarily. I did do, really a neighborhood visit. And it's pretty dense and tight up there. I don't think it's out of character at all for that locality to have lots that size. In terms of the well issues that people brought up, I feel like I have to defer to a well drilling specialist that
Right.
it's not going to compromise.
It meets the R1 zone district, 2-acre minimum lot size. And when I look
Right.
at the map with all of the 1 and 2-acre lots, it could be a zoning error, because it probably should have been zoned R1 in the first place. Just saying.
And
Tim.
Madam Chair, if I could say that it might be something in, or have been done in preparation for annexation into the city, like I said, it's within that 2-mile zone jurisdiction. So that 2-mile subdivision jurisdiction of the city, which had been declared, the city themselves have to declare that, is usually done in circumstances where they actually look to, in the future, annex that into the city.
Right.
So.
Mm.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? And the opposition letters, based on the fact that everyone else has a 2-acre or less spot, other than the 2 parcels, I think it's a reasonable request, in my mind. Is there a
Agree.
motion?
Motion to approve with the conditions as written.
And the practical difficulty?
Consistent with the facts and findings in the staff narrative, that it's really a recording issue primarily.
Okay.
I will second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We need to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Always record your deeds. I don't know what it means for the middle parcel. You know this one?